Now, it is nearly impossible to find a truly unique idea these days, and no place is that more obvious than Hollywood. It seems like for every 10 movies that come out, 7 of them are sequels and the other 3 are reboots of a franchise that's already been beaten to death. But it is what it is. As long as people keep buying tickets in record numbers, then people are going to keep pumping out movies like that. And with the sheer volume of sequels we're hit with every week, it's easy to overlook the ones that are not really attached to a comic book or whichever celebrity is currently trending on Twitter. So with that in mind, here are 10 sequels in the works for you that you might not have heard about. Starting at number 10 is one that took me by surprise for a bunch of reasons, and that's the sequel to the 2000 hit Gladiator. It's surprising because I'm pretty sure Russell Crowe's character died at the end of the first one, and why call it a sequel if it's not starring the original cast? It could just be a movie set in the Roman times, and that's enough of a selling point, for me. The 2 biggest names in that movie were Joaquin Phoenix and Russell Crowe, and they both died in the end. As of now, it looks to be centered around the little boy from the first one, all grown up, so that adds a bit to the backstory, I guess. Early reports say that Russell Crowe will be producing, so that's good, and possibly appearing in a flashback scene, but it's still early to tell. Either way, it's being directed by Mr. Ridley Scott himself, the director of the first and a bunch of other movies, and it's written by Peter Craig, the guy who wrote the latest Batman movie, so regardless of how or why it continues the story of a couple of dead guys, you can bet it's going to be pretty awesome. We don't have any details about it just yet, but the script is done, so we can expect to start getting more info over the next couple of years. Moving on to number 9, it's a sequel to the 2018 movie Den of Thieves, starring Gerard Butler. Now, the first movie was pretty freaking brutal. It did pretty well, too, and a sequel was announced way back when the first one released in 2018, but life and other things got in the way. But this is definitely on its way, with the stars Gerard Butler and O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube's son, returning, as well as the writer and director from the original showing back up. Filming had started in the spring of 2022, and while we don't know much about the plot, we expect it to keep the same general tone and size of the first one, so with any luck, we should start seeing more info on this one coming out in the next year or so. At number 8, any fan of over-the-top 90s action movies should be happy. We now have confirmation that we are, in fact, getting a sequel to 1993's Demolition Man. Now, all we have so far is confirmation from Stallone that it's definitely coming, and that's enough for me, honestly. Sly wouldn't do us dirty. Outside of that, we aren't really sure. It's hard to imagine Sandra Bullock coming back for this one 20 years down the road, unless the paycheck's big enough, and Wesley Snipes did kind of get frozen and smashed to death in the first one, so I can't imagine him coming back, but, if the paycheck's big enough. And it is set in the future, so who knows what could happen. Wesley Snipes is the king of making comebacks. I'm sure we'll start to get more information as the pieces start to come together. Either way, we can expect this to be a CGI-heavy, big-budget affair, so this one might be a little bit ways off, but we'll keep our eye on it. At number 7 is the long-anticipated, by me, if no one else, return of Elle Woods in Legally Blonde 3. And this is a movie that probably should have been made like 20 years ago, when the first movies had already pulled in $250 million, but who knows how minds work in Hollywood. And as it stands, we know that Reese Witherspoon is set to return as Elle, and honestly, she doesn't seem to have aged a day, so they could probably set it 20 years ago and it'll be just fine. No news on whether any of the rest of the cast will be returning, but we can assume Luke Wilson will return, since he doesn't really have anything going on. And what I'm going to assume is Bruiser's great-great-grandkid at this point will probably make an appearance. The script is being done by Mindy Kaling, who she has a pretty impressive resume all by herself. No news yet on the plot or the setting, but if I had to place a bet, I'd put my money on politics. Elle's going to get into politics, and that's something I'd watch, but to be fair, I'll be watching it either way. The last update we had was September 21, when they were nearing completion of the first draft of the script, and that was a year ago, so we can start to look for something more on this in the next year. At number 6 is something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime, and that's a sequel to 1986's Big Trouble in Little China. Now, when the first movie came out, it was a pretty colossal box office bomb, costing nearly twice as much to make as it brought in. Even so, the cult following that popped up around the John Carpenter classic has been running strong ever since. Fans have been begging for a sequel for, 35 years at this point. There's a catch, though. Kurt Russell will not be returning as Jack Burton for this one. Instead, we'll see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson taking over. And I guess that makes sense. The Rock's in like 85% of the movies released in the last 5 years. He would definitely be in this one too. Apparently, he's had a bit of an obsession with getting this movie made, working in the background trying to make it happen for years. So it's definitely going to happen. The Rock gets what The Rock wants. And for anyone wondering, The Rock has assured us that yes, it is in fact a direct sequel and not a reboot to the original. And that's all we know so far. So we'll keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on The Rock's socials for research and let you know. At number 5 is the third installment of the cult classic The Boondock Saints with Norman Reedus and Sean Patrick Flannery. And this is one that was bound to happen eventually, even if the fans had to fund it themselves. There's just something about these movies. I don't know what it is, but I could watch Norman Reedus talk with an Irish accent all day long. And I have. We know so far that the principal cast is going to return and that the movies will show the brothers older and in the modern world, so we'll see how that works out. There's talk that this time around they'll be targeting politicians, so that should go over well in modern America. Production was set to kick off in May 22, so we should start to get more information about it in the next year or so. At number 4, we have the 4th installment in the now decades-long series Bad Boys, starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And after the ridiculous success of the 3rd movie, 2020's Bad Boys for Life, we knew we'd be getting more of Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett. All those movies have been great. Great in my opinion, anyway. After the 2nd one, I didn't think anyone would ever make a better buddy cop movie. And while the 3rd one was a little bit ridiculous, you can't argue that it was fun. Now, there was a caveat with this one. Seems production was put on hold after Will Smith's incident at the Oscars, so we'll have to wait and see with this one, though I doubt we'll have to wait long. The last movie made $500 million. Will Smith would have to murder someone live on TV to get this movie canceled. Even then, though, who knows? Point is, it's coming. The only question is when. On to number 3, and we finally get to see Eddie Murphy's return to the character Axel Foley in the long-awaited sequel to Beverly Hills Cop. This one, the 4th in the long-running series, has been put together by Netflix, so we can expect it to move along pretty quickly. Things tend to move fast over there. We know quite a bit about this one, actually. We know that Axel Foley is obviously older, and is returning to Beverly Hills one more time, where inevitably he'll upset a bunch of bad guys, and it'll be funny and violent, and there'll be bad words. It's going to be great. This one's been a long time coming, and after Eddie Murphy's turn in Dolomite and then the sequel to Coming to America, we know he's still up for it. He's just as good as he ever was. His movie career kind of went off track there for a while, and it's nice to see him bouncing back. We know production is ongoing, but it is a Netflix movie, and we don't expect a lot of CGI for this one, so hopefully it won't take too long to get it on your screens. We'll start looking for more information in the next year or so. And now we're on to number 2, and it's something that I never thought I would get a sequel, and that's the Farrelly Brothers' second movie, 1996's Kingpin. Now, the original was a classic. It was hilarious and gross and juvenile, just like all the early Farrelly Brothers movies. And yeah, I know they had some duds in the latter half of the 2000s, but by and large, the Farrelly Brothers know what they're doing. What made the first one so iconic more than anything else was the cast. Woody Harrelson brought his A-game, and Bill Murray popped up in one of his classic roles, and this was some of Randy Quaid's best work, and that was before he went completely insane. So my point is, there's no way of knowing who we're getting back for the sequel. Woody Harrelson's career has been pretty much non-stop since '96, with a couple of big movies in just the last couple of years. So his slate's usually pretty full, and Randy Quaid is a complete psychopath now, apparently. So he's probably out, especially since he's planning a run for California's governor soon, so who knows. Definitely not me, and neither does anyone else at this point. What we do know is that the movie is definitely coming, and we should start getting more information in the next year or so. And finally, at number 1, it's a return to the classic Nick Cage, John Travolta movie Face Off. This one is of particular interest to me as a longtime Nick Cage fan, and after the recent string of hits on a very, very long and interesting resume for him, the powers that be decided it's finally time to see what an even older and wiser Nick Cage can bring to this masterpiece. And they've been pretty adamant that it's definitely a sequel and not a remake, with the original stars in place. The stars were hesitant to go forward without John Woo, the visionary director behind the first one and a bunch of other movies, but they finally settled on a guy who they think can close the deal. And that's the guy behind Blair Witch, and most recently Godzilla vs. Kong. And that doesn't tell us much, really, but if the sequel is filled with magical woods witches or 600-foot-tall monsters, I will not be disappointed either way. We don't really have much information than that, but with the stars and now the director lined up, we can expect to get more information over the next few years. And that is it. 10 sequels you didn't know were coming. Obviously, there are a lot more than 10 sequels coming. Hollywood loves a sequel, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see some more, or what you think about these movies. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Maybe subscribe for more. I love movies, and I hope to keep putting these kind of things out, so let me know.